In this very lesson, we shall be looking at expressing numbers in a standard form. But remember, we are still on real number system and we are on standard forms. In our previous lesson, we learned that the general format for writing numbers in a standard form is given as a times 10 raised to the power n, where a represents what? The decimal fraction. And n, which is the power, can either be a positive or negative whole number. Now you also said that the decimal fraction, which is a, must be greater or equal to 1. So must be greater or equal to 1, but less than. Now in expressing numbers in a standard form, we are going to go through some few steps to guide us in doing that. So let's go through the steps. So these are the steps. Let's start. The first step says that identify the position of the decimal point. Move the decimal points between the first two natural numbers. And then the third, each movement to the right is 10 raised to the power negative 1. And then each movement to the left is what? 10 power 1. Take note of this. Each movement to the right is what? 10 raised to the power negative 1. And each movement to the left is what? 10 power 1. Each movement. Now, after completion, ignore zeros before the first counting number and then the last counting number. So these are the steps that is going to guide us in expressing numbers in a standard form. So let's take our first example. So we have our first example. We have to express this number in a standard form. So we have our solution. So the first step says that identify the position of the decimal point. So where is the decimal point? You know that every number, there is a point behind the last number. So with this number, there is a point here, but in actual sense, we don't write it. So this number is the same. The same as this. Good. Now the second step says that relocate or move the decimal point so that it will be in between the first two natural numbers. So these are the first two natural numbers. So we are going to move the decimal point to this very point. So let's move 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So our decimal point is here. So this number 38200 is equal to, we have 3.8200. Good. Now the third step says that each movement to the right is what? 10 power negative 1. And each movement to the left is what? 10 power 1. So you realize that our movement is to the left. We were moving to the left. So we are going to multiply this by what? 10 to the left, 10 power 1. Each movement, so we moved 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So we have times 10 power 1, times 10 power 1, times 10 power 1, because each movement is what? 10 power 1. And we moved 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess you are following. Now let's continue and then perform some simple algebra here. So we have 3.8200 and then time. Now we know that in indices, when two or more numbers are multiplying and then they have the same base, what do? We pick one of the base, we add their exponents. So we are going to get, we pick one of the base, we add their exponent. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, and that's going to give us what? 4. So let me write it. Good. Now let's move on to the last step. Now the last step says that after completion, ignore zeros before the first counting number and then the last counting number. So we are going to identify the first counting number and then the last counting number. This is the first counting number, this is the last counting number. So we are going to ignore those behind the last counting number and then before the first counting number. So we have 3.82. We are going to ignore these zeros behind the last counting number. So we are going to be left with 3.8 times 10 raised to the power 4. And this is the standard form for this very number. Let's take our next example. So we have our second example. We have to express this number in a standard form. So first, we are going to identify the position of the decimal points. So we have, now this is the position of the decimal point, and then we move it so that it will be in between the first two natural numbers. So this is the first two natural numbers. So we are going to move the decimal point to this very place. So let's move it. We have 1, 2, and then 3. So we have 0.0053 is the same as now our point is here. So we have 0.3. Good. Now the third step says that each movement to the right is what? 10 raised to the power negative 1. So we realize that with this one, we were moving what? Towards the right. And each movement to the right is times 10 raised to the power negative 1. So we have times 10 neg 1, times 10 neg 1, times 10 neg 1, because we moved how many times? 1, 2, 3. So we have 1, 2, 3. Good. Now let's perform some simple algebra. We have 0.3. Now indices, when the bases are the same, what do? We pick one of the bases, we add their exponent. Good. Now the last step says that after completion, that is that, ignore the rows before the first counting number. So this is the first counting number. So we are going to ignore the zero before the first counting number. So finally, our answer is going to be 5.3 times 10 raised to the power negative 3. And this is the standard form of this very number. Let's take one more example. So we have to express this number in a standard form. So what do? We identify the position of the decimal point. So this is that. So we have 84.36. Now the second step says that we have to move or relocate the decimal point so that it will be in between the first two natural numbers. So this is the first two natural numbers. So we are going to move it to this very point. So we have 84.36. Now our point is here. We have 8.4 and then we have 36. Now the third step says that each movement to the right is what? This, and then each movement to the left is what? 10 power 1. So we realize that we moved to the left and that movement is only 1. So we multiply this by 10 power what? 1. So we have 8.436 times 10 power 1 or 10. So this is the standard form of this very number. Let's take one last example and then we run out of here. So we have our solution. So we know that this is the position of the decimal point. We are going to move it so that it will be in between the first two natural numbers. First two natural. So this is the first two natural numbers. So we are going to have 61.38. Then we move it to this very point. So we have 1. So we have this is already times 10 power 2. So we have 61.38 is equal to, now our point is here, we have 6.138 times 10 power 2. Now each movement to the left is what? Times 10 power 1. So we moved to the left. So the movement is to the left. And each movement to the left is what? Times 10 power 1. So we are going to have 6.138 times, now when two numbers are multiplying and the bases are the same, we pick one of the base, we add their exponent. 2 plus 1 will give us 3. And this is the standard form for this very number. I'm going to give you some tutorial set questions. Pause the video, you try your hands on them. This brings us to the end of today's lesson. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.